Hi, and welcome to the Tanko Mobile Podcast. My name is Miriam Jouar, and I'm joined today by the incredibly awesome Andrew Martonic. Hey, Andrew, how are you?
That's quite the introduction. I'm doing just fine. I don't know. I guess it'll be for people to decide for themselves how incredible I am, I guess.
Indeed. Well, you are pretty awesome. It's always a pleasure when I meet up with you. And we just spent some time together in Seattle at a coffee shop, and it was great to catch up, not to be kind of two ships in the night, passing each other in the hallway at a conference for a change, or
I know, and it works out.
To take photos.
And you come spend some time in the Pacific Northwest. So unfortunately, I haven't even seen you every time you come up here, but it works sometimes.
So October 22nd, if you're listening to this in the future and or you're wondering or you're not catching this live, it is well into the fall, a month into the fall, but we had a slew of some fall phones. It doesn't seem to end this year, the launches and announcements. So that we're going to talk about as many of these as we can and kind of rapid fire our impressions and feelings about these, and then spend particularly a bit more phones and the new HTC One A9, at least the stuff we can talk about, because there's some things we still cannot talk about fully. And then before we start, Andrew, I'm just gonna pimp our sponsor real quick. Our sponsor, as usual, is HipChat, and don't forget to check it out. If you are actually using communications in your team and you want to more effortlessly chat with one another, HipChat is one of the options. You should check it out. It is a really complete solution for all video conferencing and conversations, very similar to other products. HipChat does give you a special deal if you follow the link hipchat.com/tnkgrl. That's hipchat.com/tnkgrl, TNKL. And you'll get 2 months free of the HipChat Plus, which is their premium product. So, if you're looking for a way for your small team, if you're like a startup or something, to collaborate together a little better, check it out. This might be the solution for you. So again, I want to thank HipChat for being sponsors of the Tanko Mobile Podcast. And now, with no further ado, Andrew, tell me, of all the phones for the summer and the fall, which is the one that you are the most excited about?
Well, I just wrote a thing up on AndroidCentral.com, my 2 months kind of retrospective with the Galaxy Note 5, because, we talked about how crazy the silly season can be, the late summer, you kind of have the early spring and then the late summer, early fall kind of releases. And it's good to go back, I think, and look at these devices like 2 months, 3 months, 6 months along. And I've been using the Note 5 every single day since it was announced. And I think it's a pretty damn good phone. I'm assuming I'm allowed to swear. But
you can swear all you want. There's all the fucks and the shits in the world on this podcast.
It's a pretty wonderful phone. And that's coming from me as someone who normally shies away from the larger phones. I mean, I really like the size of the Galaxy S6, but of course the battery life wasn't really great. And so, but the Note 5, and it's funny, I get a lot of flack for not being like the biggest fan of Samsung devices, but at the same time, I've used the Note 5 every single day by my own choice. I have dozens of devices to choose from, and I continue to use it. And I mean, I think we have plenty of other choices, but and I'd love to hear what you think more about the Note 5. But it's been a fantastic phone, even 2 months later.
I so agree with you. Like, I think I'm the same way. I get in trouble a lot of times for, at least in the past. Look, I have to say that since the Galaxy, what was it? The metal one before last year.
The Galaxy
very
Alpha.
Thin one. The Alpha, thank you. Since the Alpha, I've been like, oh my God, we have a Samsung that's paying attention here, probably because of the market needs and the fact that they haven't done so well financially. At the time, they were pretty dire, desperate place. So the Alpha got my attention, made me raise an eyebrow. Then the Note 4 was like, okay, I like this direction. And then the Galaxy S6 and 6 Edge singed it for me. I agree, though. And the fingerprint reader for me was an issue because of my super dry right thumb, the one that's all nasty from playing bass. Seems to work much better on the second gen fingerprint readers like the Note 5. And so it brings us to the Note 5. And to me, you're right. I think I have one here from Verizon. I want to thank them for sending me a review in it. It is, here, let's get the logo in that. You know, really, it is a great phone. Yeah, it's a great phone. I really love it. Right. I think it's one of my favorite. And just all the way, all around a great package. And most importantly, what I like about it, that it's a big phone that doesn't feel that big.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it just feels kind of right. And yes, I kind of miss the movable battery and the SD card slot, but at the same time, you can't go wrong with a Note 5. TouchWiz is so lightweight now, and I'm using the Google Now launcher and the Google keyboard. You know, it's definitely one of my favorites of the summer. So I'm 100% behind you, and I have to give kudos to Samsung for really making some tough choices, which I think worked out pretty well in the end. And more importantly, you know me, I'm about the camera and really not sacrificing anything about the camera.
Yeah, I mean, the camera is just so good that every time I have to consider using another phone, I go, well, I'm going to have to take a drop in camera quality. So the other things better be pretty damn good, because the Note 5's camera, not only the end result's really good, but it's so fast. It's never crashed on me. It's never lagged. I can take 20 burst shots in HDR and then just swipe over and pick the ones I want right away. It's never been slow. I've never had issues with anything. And it makes me completely fine putting up with a couple of the weird idiosyncrasies of TouchWiz. I can deal with that because the camera, the fingerprint sensor has been great for me. But I think you hit on it. It's a big phone that doesn't feel that big because they've made these bezels so small on the screen. And the rounded glass on the back has made a world of difference in how you hold the thing and how it fits in your hand, even though it's 5.7 inches or whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't know if we just heard that in the podcast, but I had a phone call that I dismissed on my phone, and it went to Google Voice, and somehow my video is gone. I don't know.
Oh,
there you go.
There you are.
No. Oh, wait a minute. Where did it go? Turn camera on. Sorry, guys.
I see you got a Hangout call. So here's your problem.
So it's really what happened is I dismissed a phone call coming in from Walgreens, just telling me that my my prescription's ready probably, and it went to my Hangout, and now ever since then my video is gone. Maybe it'll come back. Don't worry about it. You still hear me? That's all that matters.
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I have no idea what's going on. Maybe my bandwidth is dead now. That's why it's decided to get rid of me.
Yeah,
my internet
like you right now.
My internet is pretty wonky. Okay, let's just continue with me just being an icon. What I was going to say was exactly. Oh, and your quality just went up, interestingly, by the way.
It wasn't lowest common denominator dropping to your quality.
So let's talk about so we talk about the Note 5, and I agree with you 100%. It's definitely a contender. What is your next phone? Like, what's the second one on that list of summer phones? And just for shits and giggles, let's remind everyone what that list is.
I mean, so the big thing that I would first say is, like, the Note 5 is a great phone, but it's really, really expensive. So, I mean, this is coming from a perspective of just saying, like, this phone is great, but yeah, you're talking about $800, realistically $800 once you get it out the door with tax and things like that. So, I'm trying to think what fits directly underneath that. I don't put the G4 up there. I think that Uh-oh, you're cutting out on me now.
Oh no. I said, why not? Why is the G4 not a contender?
So I just didn't. Okay, so I don't like, first of all, the software on the G4. Just even from the G3 and the G2, LG software just doesn't feel complete to me. It feels like it's a variety of ideas kind of thrown together and nothing really executed all that well. And they've kind of just changed the way that Android works in a way that's just really frustrating. They put, I mean, this is the same case when they were on Jelly Bean and KitKat, but now, I mean, on Lollipop, which they're on currently, they like make things look like it's Lollipop, but they don't work the right way. So the way that they changed the notifications and changed the lock screen, changed the on-screen buttons that are like on-screen buttons, but they don't act the way that other on-screen buttons are. It's kind of like, it just doesn't feel very authentic to like actually working properly. And it's kind of changed for no reason. And I kind of feel the same way when they brought out this different design with like crazy huge square icons on the G4 and things like that. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So that would still be an issue even if the hardware, worked for me. But I've just never gotten in on the back buttons either. I mean, I remember kind of adapting to them on the G2 when it first started, and the G3 was okay. But even on the G4, where they made the buttons bigger and easier to press, it just doesn't seem like you're getting much for it. So the buttons are on the back where you can't see them, but the bezels are still bigger than they are in the Note 5, and the Note 5 has the buttons in the normal spots. And so it just feels like there are all these little things that, like I said, you don't have to compromise for these. I mean, it's one of those things where the camera is great on the G4, but the camera is also great on something like the Note 5, and the Note 5 doesn't have all these other issues as well.
Yeah, I mean, before, I hope you can hear me okay. But I think the reason for me is the camera. I still think it's a touch better and has more flexibility, the other ones. But I have to say in terms of camera speed. So I have the rear buttons, to be honest with you. I've gotten used to them. But at the same time, I can see your points. I'm more G4 not having a metal build, and I think we should talk about the V10 because it improves on that in significant ways. Are you still able to hear me, Andrew?
Yeah, you're coming and going. So I turned off my video to see if I can help you out by not sending you a video.
This is so
also.
bizarre. I mean, I know my internet is crappy, but this is really, really bad right now. I have no idea why, because when I do a quick test, it seems to be Google has apparently determined that it shouldn't turn on the video again. So
odd. Yeah, I think even the audio is getting a little choppy for me. So
interesting.
I'm trying to follow your points best I can. I'm dialed in here.
Me too. You're clear on my end in terms of audio.
Well, that's good.
So anyway, yeah, the G4. So let's talk about the V10, right? Since we just talked about the G4 and some of the things we don't like about it. What is your take on the V10?
So I've only used it very, very briefly. My editor-in-chief, Phil Nickinson, currently has our review in it. He got a South Korean model to use. Obviously, I just laid out the reasons why I don't really care for the G4. And the V10 is, the G4 and a bigger screen, a little spec bump, and a little more rugged, I guess you can say. It has like this textured back, and then it has this little tiny screen up at the top that's separate from the other screen to do notifications and app launching and stuff. And the first thing that popped in my mind was Galaxy Note Edge, which
yes.
I go, well, so it doesn't do anything really special, right? It's just this little segmented screen that you can use as an app launcher. You can get notifications up there. You can get media playback controls. It's very much the way that the Galaxy Note Edge worked, and where they just took stuff that's already in the OS and perfectly capable in the regular rectangular screen and just put it over on this other thing just to be different. And the novelty was never really appealed to me. And I just wrote it off. I was like, well, if you wanted this phone, you could kind of get a G4 instead, right?
Yeah. I don't know. To me, I'm excited for number 4, or the V10, sorry, is that finally seeing some metal on an LG flagship. It's got me excited primarily because the stainless steel, which is a little different than what we've seen. I mean, it's kind of like the only other phone I can think of is the iPhone 4 and 4S. So, the ruggedness it seems to me that yes, they made a rugged phone, but it still seems like a good looking, relatively speaking, good looking phone. It doesn't have that Galaxy Active, whatever that the sporty Galaxies are called.
Yes.
Feeling like you put a phone in a case and sold it with a case built in. And maybe the back has that a little bit on the V10. But what's got me excited is the front screen, I think, is a gimmick. Improving on the existing awesome camera. And then, of course, the finger. I can't wait to get my own review in it because I've enjoyed the G4 so much, and I have to say I'm getting a little bit slowly over it now that there are a few other options we're going to talk about that are potentially superseding the G4 for me. But the simplicity in a way, you know what I'm saying? So quickly summarize, we talked about the Note 5, we talked about the V10, and my conclusion was I really enjoyed the G4 on the camera because it had some extra things that the Galaxies didn't have that for me were important, although I admit that the Galaxies have better performance or speed for taking pictures. So if you really for what matters to everyday people, I think that's really critical. And then as I said, the V10 to me is kind of like a G4 on steroids. I'm not excited about the screen, but mostly excited about the extra screen, but mostly excited about the video manual mode and a bunch of other things like that.
Which not a lot of cameras have done.
Right, construction, the fingerprint reader, etc., etc. So, that being said, the next thing I threw at you was the OnePlus 2. So how about we start there again, since the podcast I'll edit it to be nice.
Yeah. So the OnePlus 2, I used the OnePlus One. I was one of the first people that had one, reviewed it, and it was very much underwhelming. But the OnePlus 2, they really stepped it up big time, I think. They made the right improvements on the internals. They went with this fingerprint scanner in the front. They upped the exterior materials big time with the metal, a lot better. And the camera improved. And it jumped $80 in price. I think that they did a really good job, and for the price, again, I really don't like doing that, but for this price of $380 or $400, it's really solid, and you could do a lot worse. It does a lot of things great, but again, this is why I made that qualification earlier on with the Note 5. It's that this doesn't go toe to toe with the Note 5. The Note 5 is also $300 and something more, which is a big difference.
As you said, there's a whole different price category going on here with the OnePlus 2 and similar phones, right? And we should talk about it because I think they are significant in the flagship level. So yeah. So are you still?
Oh, you're cutting out there. Sorry.
Andrew? I was cutting out. Weird. Okay, well, I'm an LT, so hopefully it'll improve. But
yes.
What I was saying is that this whole different. Yeah, let's get rid of the video. This whole different price category, right, is really an interesting category. And while you're not getting the Note 5 or the V10 kind of super polished flagship experience, you're coming pretty close, which is exciting, I think.
Yeah, you're coming closer than you ever would before. I mean, we're talking about a difference of 50% in the prices, and that's not giving you 50% less of a good phone experience.
True.
I think about when they announced the new Moto X Pure Edition, which I unfortunately haven't had an opportunity to use yet. I was thinking about how I bought the last Pure Edition, the 2014 Pure Edition, and I said, I remember buying that, and I got a wood back on it, and it was $615 or something for the last edition. And now they're coming out the gate at under $400, and arguably offering a better experience, of course, more so than just 1 year of technological advancements would offer you. And that's really important. And there are more choices out there in that range. And I think it's somewhat influenced by the fact that the real cost of phones is starting to be surfaced to people as 2-year contracts in the US are going away. People are more understanding of, hey, this is a $700 phone, not a $200 phone. And, there wasn't a lot of price flexibility before, but now people understand that. And when they're paying for it up front or paying for it monthly, it makes a big difference when you're talking about $300.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of these phones, because there's a few of them. Let's put it out there. There's the Nextbit phone, which I think we should talk about a little bit. There is the OnePlus 2. There is the new A9. That are all, and the Moto X Pure, as you said. They're all in that price range of
the Nexus 5X as well.
And the Nexus 5X. They are all in this kind of like, pretty damn awesome, but not quite flagship level, or very close to flagship level. In some cases, make some daring omissions, should I say, and other cases make some minor omissions, right? It's really, I think, it's a really interesting time, I think, in mobile phones right now to have that category, kind of pop up basically and become mature. And I'm actually really excited about it, because I think that this $650, $700 flagship thing is just not sustainable in the long term, No,
and I think the nice thing is that, I think it's a little, I don't know. It just kind of proves our point that a lot of us have been talking about for the past 3 or 4 years about, this carrier contract system really sucks. And it really inflated prices is what it did. I mean, when the manufacturer could charge the carrier $600 or $700, and the carrier, it was all about how much the carrier wanted to subsidize, and the manufacturer could just keep ballooning prices. There really wasn't a market to go to a carrier and say, oh, we want to give you this $400 phone. That just wasn't really part of the discussion there. And as manufacturers are starting to break away from that a little bit, and carriers are taking the weight off their own shoulders by giving prices up front and letting people finance them or whatever, is really, that's what we've been talking about for so many years, about bringing your own phone to carriers and things. And it means that we can actually give focus to devices that are $400 unlocked instead of $700. And, we can talk about, even if you want a step lower, things like the Zenfone 2, things like what Alcatel is putting out there, the Moto G, those kind of devices in the $200 unlocked range are way better than anything. Like, nobody who's a super phone nerd was really caring about a $150 or $200 unlocked phone like three years ago, because they were all crap. There was no market for it at all. But now there is.
Think back as soon back as the Desire Age 16, right?
Right.
Mid-range phone a couple of years ago now, maybe a year and a half ago. I loved that phone. I thought it was great for the money. But at the time, that was the same price as the OnePlus 2 is today.
Right.
And I mean, look at what you get now, right?
Much cheaper than the M8.
Yeah, and it was definitely a compromise. Didn't have NFC, Snapdragon 600, no.
615?
615, that's right. Not bad. But the display, I think, was only 720p or something, which was
and it was
kind
plastic,
of meh, right? It was plastic, but it was nice plastic, but still was plastic. So, I mean, we've come a long way. So for me, let's talk about the glaring omission on the OnePlus 2, because we need to cover this. This is, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give them slack for this, but you who tuned me onto this, which is amazing, because at the launch event in San Francisco, I was covering it for Pocket Now and for Mobile Geeks, and you and I just, I was not even thinking of checking whether NFC was on board, because I'm like, of course it has NFC. It's a mid-range to flagship-ish phone. Why would they not have NFC? Yeah, flagship killer. Never settle, guys. And then the next thing you know, you pointed it out, and I was like, oh crap! I didn't actually check the fuckers. event, so my story didn't even mention it. People
because
are like, hey, did you know? And you were, yeah. Well,
I mean, it was such
go
like
on.
you said, as like a foregone conclusion. Like, of course it has NFC. This is a $380 to $420 phone. Of course it has NFC. But and you said, I mean, it was a little. It's not even a little. It's a lot more explainable to not have wireless charging. It is not really explainable at all to me to not have NFC in that level of phone. We're used to not having NFC in like a Moto G, Moto E level, but not on a $400 box phone.
I know, it's crazy to me, and disappointing in a major way. Like, I just can't accept it. I'm sorry, I can't. To me, it's like I cannot actually recommend the OnePlus 2 to anyone because it doesn't have an.
So I think about
crazy, but
sorry.
Cool. No, carry on.
I think about I've started to use Android Pay a ton lately,
Right.
and it didn't even have to go through my mind about whether or not Android Pay would work on all these phones. I just installed the app and I was like, oh, I can add my credit cards. I can start using Tap and Pay. Seattle is doing okay with Tap and Pay adoption, and I've started to use it. I didn't have to think about the fact that it wouldn't have NFC, and now I'm used to being able to tap my phone and pay for things. I'm not really using NFC for anything else, but I am using it for that, and that's pretty important to me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a combination of a couple of things. Number one, pairing Bluetooth devices over NFC. I've been doing it forever, and I really love it. It's a minor thing, but in terms of user experience, it's a big bang for your buck. And then the other thing is, as you mentioned, Android Pay. I use it all the time. I mean, I've had the A9 for less than a week, and I've been using it primarily to pay for almost everything that was Tap to Pay for the whole week now.
Yeah,
right?
Once you get used to it, and I've started to do the thing that people have talked about with Android Pay, Apple Pay, whatever, you start choosing retailers that have it, because that just saved you a little bit of time, and it's convenient and it's cool, and you just go and you tap and you're done. And that's one thing. It's like, and it's such a simple thing that, like, why do I have to give that up on the OnePlus 2? It's not like you can't explain that away. Like, it's not like, oh, well, we still have capacitive buttons because some people want capacitive buttons, and we had to cut the battery by 15% to make it this thin. No, there's no explanation for that. It needed to be in there.
I think in that sense, I told you need to fix this ACE NFC. That's all you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what else are you gonna do? It's like wait till the OnePlus 3. Like, you're kidding me, right? I mean, this is insane.
Right.
So,
I mean, that's not, I don't know. It's just such an inconsequential thing that it shouldn't even have to be a talking point. And it kind of took away from, like I said, they did so many good things on the OnePlus 2. They, the alert slider, like things like that were
I know that thing is
huge
amazing.
innovations. I would even call them an innovation. But then it's like, why did you have to distract away from it by doing? I mean, OnePlus is really good at distracting away from the real message with other superfluous bullshit. But this was just useless. It's like, come on, guys. It's 25 cents, 50 cents. Even if it was $5 to add NFC, do it. Raise the price by $5.
Exactly. I completely agree with you. I mean, eat the costs for sure, like in terms of the, even for $10. I mean, so what I was saying about the OnePlus 2 is that I just can't recommend it. There are many things I love about it. The notification slider, the fact that it has USB-C, the build quality, the camera hardware, like the fact that it is OIS, etc.
Yeah, the camera app, not so much.
But exactly, the software on the camera, just it underperforms for its hardware spec level, in my opinion, significantly compared to the competition. So I cannot recommend. Go on.
I was going to say on the camera point before you went on, that was very much the situation on the OnePlus One as well. It had a lot of things, and the software that just not necessarily the user facing software, which in itself wasn't that great. It was the image processing. It went way overboard on HDR. Things didn't look right. The white balance is a little funky. Those things are very hard to do. And there's a reason why these companies have lots and lots of engineers to do photography. And, that's been a stumbling block. It's definitely better on the OnePlus 2, but, those are the things where you see it come up a little short.
Yeah, absolutely. So to me, if you don't care about the camera and you can live without NFC, the OnePlus 2 is an awesome choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's nicely built. It's fast. It has a big screen. It does a lot of things in the same way that the OnePlus One had a lot of compromises, but was still a good choice. But the problem is, as we were talking about earlier, the competition is a little stiffer this year for devices in this price class. Yeah,
for sure, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I want to point out is that, when I said if you don't care about the camera and you don't mind that it's lacking NFC, get the OnePlus 2. To me, that's a glaring thing to say if you don't care about the camera in 2015, considering how many Android phones we now have with a decent camera.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing with the Galaxy S6 and Note 5 was raising the floor of what your average picture you get out of that phone is. Of course, it's all about having a high ceiling as well. Like I can put this on a tripod, go to manual, do crazy stuff with it. But the pull it out of your pocket, snap a picture in 2 seconds is getting better. And I think the new Motorola's are the same way. The new Nexuses are the same way. And, so you don't really have much of an excuse anymore. I mean, you can't really say, oh, if you don't care about the camera, well, that's really important to a lot of people. And there are other places you can go in the same price range to get a pretty good camera.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I'm hoping there's rumors of another OnePlus event and product coming out soon. And I'm hoping that they learn some lessons. I kind of have a feeling we're going to be disappointed on the NFC front simply because, if this product was designed, like when this product was designed was probably at the time when the OnePlus 2 was not out yet. So I'm not sure about this, but let's see how it goes. I really like OnePlus and what they're doing. I'm being highly critical because I care, not because I am trying to be dismissive about the whole OnePlus thing. I just want them to give us some products that really define the category, right, of this affordable flagship, which is what they kind of pioneered in many ways. So,
and I've already seen such a huge change in how they operate just from the original OnePlus One launch with cyanogen being involved in things, all the way to the OnePlus 2 launch, which you said we were both at, and they've changed their messaging a little bit. They've figured a lot of things out. And they're kind of being a little more humble about what they can actually accomplish and where they actually land in the hierarchy of phone manufacturers. And I think if they can stick around, a couple more years of that could really do them a lot of good.
Yeah, I agree. So let's see, what else do we have here in terms of phones? We've talked about the V10, we talked about the Note 5, we talked about OnePlus 2. Let's talk quickly. We did touch on them, so let's talk about them real quick. The Moto G and Moto X.
Yeah.
So you haven't played with the Moto X. I have a pure edition here, a custom-made one.
Yeah, I was a big fan of last year's, but I have not gotten the new one yet.
Well, I hope you get your hands on one. All I have to say is that it's a great all-around phone, but the camera, as much as I'd like you to think the camera is awesome, think HTC M9. It's like, yes, right, you get tons of resolution, but no, you get no OIS, and the pixels are small, which means low light performance suffers, especially because of the lack of OIS, but small pixels in low light, not so good. So, it's pretty fast though. So if you are just casual about your photography, it'll do the trick. It has all the other bells whistles. I personally not a big fan of the Moto X lineage of design. It's never been my thing.
Yeah,
I find the phones too porky, too thick. They used to be smaller and then it worked because they fit well in your hand, but now they're so big that it just seems to dilute the experience that the original Moto X and last year's Moto X was still able to pull off. Because this year's Moto X, at least the one we get here, is what, 5.5? Whatever it is. It's massive.
I think.
It's 5.7. Holy crap. Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah, I mean, so we noticed this issue with the Motorola design when the Nexus 6 came out, right? We've seen this kind of big curved back where it gets really thick in the middle and it's very kind of rounded everywhere. And it made sense on the original Moto X. It made no sense on the Nexus 6. It was just too big.
Oh, the Nexus 6. Oh, don't even get me started.
Yeah, so this issue of the rounded back, it was on the edge with the last Moto X because we were talking 5.1 inches or 5.2, whatever it is. It was okay, but when you scale that up in those same proportions, and it has the same proportions, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think honestly, I don't think you can go wrong with this pure whatever edition, but it would not be my first choice considering what just landed from HTC and from LG for the Nexus 5X, really.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Some people like the big phones, and I think that there are different ways to do the big screen, and as we'll talk about, you can talk about with the 6P as well, because I have not used the 6P yet. That's 5.7 inches, but it's not thick and bulbous and kind of weird.
It doesn't feel as big. It's kind of like the Note 5. The Note 5 doesn't feel as big as it is. The Nexus 6P doesn't feel as big as it is. And yet, to me, the Moto X Pure feels massive. Even though it is quite a bit smaller than the Nexus 6, it is almost as big as a Nexus 6. And that's just not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I used the Nexus 6 for a while because I wanted to try Project Fi, and I reluctantly used the Nexus 6 for a couple of months. Like I said at the very top, I'm not a big fan of the big phones, but the Nexus 6 is just too big. I mean, I've been converted. I can use the Note 5, but the screen size does not tell the whole story there at all. No. I mean, there is way more involved with the thickness and the bezels and the weight. I mean, there are different ways to do this. And I think LG kind of started this with the G3, with the big screen and a smaller kind of size. Totally. But yeah, I mean, and then you look at like the iPhone 6s Plus. I mean, that thing is just huge.
It's huge, yeah.
And that's another example of the design not scaling well.
Exactly.
That design, the iPhone 6s works really well in the 4.7 inch size. But if you scale up that super thin, flat, slippery size up to a 5.5 inch screen, now it looks like you're carrying an iPad mini around, and there's nothing to hold on to, and there are issues there.
I mean, the reality is the 6 Plus and 6S Plus are both massive phones for their screen size.
Yeah, I was just over at the coffee shop and I saw a guy standing in line using one, and not a very big guy, smaller hands. And I seriously thought that he had an iPad in his hand because there's like 6 inches of phone hanging out. He was holding it by the bottom bezel. So there's like 6 inches of phone hanging out up there. And it was really, really weird. And now,
yeah, I mean,
I didn't think that it was a One A9, but I still knew it was an iPhone.
For me, the phone that last year felt that way to me before the 6 Plus came out was the OnePlus One. So much bezel
for a 5.5 inch screen. I think it was.
Yeah. So I think, guys, my takeaway, and maybe tell me what you think, Andrew. My takeaway is that in that kind of mid-range price tier, not the mid-range spec tier, but mid-range price tier, which is OnePlus 2, Moto X Pure, Nextbit, and Nexus 5X and HTC A9. The two ones with big screens are the Moto X Pure and the OnePlus 2. We've talked about the OnePlus 2 already. You know, if you can live without NFC, go for it. But for me, what I would say is the camera on the Pure, on the Moto X Pure is really limited in terms of its hardware, what it can do. Even if you throw a good camera app at it, you're gonna run into some problems. Whereas with the OnePlus 2, at least there's a potential for OnePlus 2 to improve the imaging stack and for a third-party camera to bolt onto that and give you a better experience and really stretch out the specs of that camera. But in my opinion, you're better served by the Nexus 5X or the HTC One A9, which we're about to talk to, in that price range. And honestly, it's not much of a stretch to jump to the Nexus 6P, at that price point. Honestly, the Nexus 6P for its price is pretty unbeatable. So that's what I would tell you. If you're on a budget, consider what I just said. And then, so let's talk quickly about the Moto G. So because we have to talk about it, because I think I reviewed it for Twit, and it was a delightful phone for the money. Yeah,
I mean, I remember when Phil, my editor-in-chief, and I were at the last Motorola event, and I took the G and he took the X. And so he never really paid much attention to the G. And I was like, Phil, this is a really, really good phone. And I was like, it's $180. I didn't care that it didn't have LTE, and I didn't care that it wasn't like the best camera in the world, which of course, even the Moto X last year didn't have the best camera in the world. But then when the new one came out, Phil got to use the new one first. And excuse me, he was like, wow, this is a really good phone. And every time he said something, I was linking him back to my previous articles of the last Moto G, because the new one is very similar to the old one. It's basically just a spec bump and a slight screen bump as well. Yeah. And it was like, he was having this revelation that I had 13 months ago. I go, this thing is crazy for $200. It's such a great device.
No, absolutely. I think one of my favorite thing about the G this year is that it has the Nexus 6's camera without the OIS. And believe it or not, at that price point, that is a pretty damn good camera.
The Nexus 6 retailed for $650, and this is $219.
You lose the OIS and you get a Snapdragon 400, but honestly, it's like a mini Nexus 6, basically.
Right. And just like last
design
year.
And everything. Yeah. And it's water resistant. Bonus.
Yeah, and they still do the swappable shells and things. My stepdad had a Nexus 4, and when he broke it, I had no issue at all just saying, so he's unlocked. I said, just buy a Moto G, $180 and a grip shell for $15, so that it's a little more rugged. And it had the same or better performance than a Nexus 4, of course, because the specs step up so much over the year. And I mean, it's really funny, all these people like us that use all these different phones, we would have no problem for a weekend or a week or 2 weeks using a Moto G. It does everything we want. It's everything, like you said, Snapdragon 400, it's a step down in performance, but it's also doing less. The software is true to how much hardware it has to work with.
It is really the unspoken Nexus. That's how I call the Moto G. The Moto G is kind of, think of a Nexus that's not a Nexus. Like, it is not branded, but it might as well be part of the Nexus lineup. It's that good. And all three of them, I've used all three. I even the first one, it suffered because of this really crappy camera it had, but everything else about it was great. And then the second gen improved on the camera and got bigger, sadly. But these two first ones were only 3G. There was an LTE version of the second one, I think. And then we got LTE by default on the third one with a 13 megapixel camera. And honestly, the second and third, they seem to they keep getting better. And I keep asking myself, like, what's the next one going to be like? Because at this price point, I don't know how they can do anything better. Think about it. They've been using the same processor for 3 years in a row. because processor-wise, you really don't need much more than a Snapdragon 410 for most things.
And I'm really glad that they have stuck with a very, plain design. They've stuck with a similar design, similar internals, because that means that they can keep just adding little things here and there while keeping the same price. Like this year, they gave you the option to have 16 gigs of storage and 2 gigs of RAM. They made LTE by default, like you said, and they bumped up the screen size. I remember when I was at Motorola's headquarters last year getting introduced to the original or the previous G and X, and they said, we went to the places where these phones sell well, South America, Eastern Europe, India, Middle East, and we said, what do you want? They want loudspeakers, they want a bigger screen, they want water resistance, and they want a good price. And the Moto G just hits those points. And nobody buying a Moto G for $179, the 1 gig of RAM, 8 gigs of storage version, is saying, oh, this doesn't run Ski Safari 2 whatever fast enough. It's $180. And just like the last Moto G, you could pick it up in a blister pack for $99 at Walmart.
Wow.
And what did you get for $99 at Walmart before that? A complete piece of garbage.
Crap. Yep, absolutely. So let's switch gears quickly, talk about the Nextbit, because I really want to talk about the Nexuses and the A9, and we have about 10, 15, 20 minutes at most left. So let the Nextbit. I love the design. I'm very intrigued by this in the cloud thing that's going on with them. I got, full disclosure, I know some of the folks that work there well, and I got to see it behind closed doors early on. Couldn't talk about it, of course. Really, really digging what I'm seeing here. I really, really love the design. So what do you think?
Yeah, I got to see it during CTIA about a month ago. Got to go use it, an early production or pre-production version. And I really like what they're trying to do with the design as well. I like that it doesn't look like any other phone. It kind of has, of course, hints of older HTC. It has hints of Nokia. It has hints of just not thinking about what a smartphone is today, but just kind of thinking about, hey, how should we design this? And I think that that's really, really cool. I'm a little less excited about the software, if I have to be honest. I understand what they're doing, but I also think that that's a really competitive place that they're just waiting for Google to eat their lunch as soon as Google just decides to do that, and then they're done from that one backup point. Of course, they're trying to do other things, but I like it as a complete package for sure. And I love seeing a new player that comes in and it's not bad.
Exactly. And, knowing with the team and, who they have, I'm not surprised. It's not bad. They've really thought this out. The only concern I have is by the time it launches, will it still be competitive in this ultra competitive environment we're in right now?
Right. We're talking February, March next year.
Right. And at least they'll have an 808 on board, which is a little more oomphy than a 617 or something. Yeah.
People are saying, Snapdragon 808, 2 gigs of RAM or whatever. Those things don't concern me as much.
No, not me.
I just want to know what other features and total packages are people going to be offering, companies offering by that time next year.
By February. Yeah, this is Mobile Congress territory. We might have announcements on a GS7 or something at that point. Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind. Like I personally think if you have the money, go ahead and back them. And it's too late now because they're finished. But go ahead and pre-order one, because it is supporting an American company that's really trying to do something unique and different. And there's lots of creativity and out of the box thinking going on here, and I really wish them luck, and I'm really excited to get my hands on this device. Yeah,
I just like that they're trying to do new things, and I don't even know if the Robin is going to be a hit or anything like that, but I don't think that they're a one-hit wonder, and they're very clear about the fact that they're not stopping with like these 2 cloud features and this one phone. Like that's not their goal is not to just collect some Kickstarter money and be done. That's not where they're at.
They have way more on their plate, I'm sure. And so, I would say, this is a bit of a wild card and a really interesting one at that. So let's get to the meat of this. Nexus 6P, Nexus 5X.
And you've touched a
what's your
6P,
takeaway?
right? I'm super
Yeah, I
envious
have.
of not having used one yet.
I was at the launch event, and so the 6P. Okay, look, the 6P is metal unibody. Okay, let's rewind. Huawei makes some really beautiful phones. The P8 non-light, the real P8, is all metal and gorgeous. The what's the latest one? The really large one.
The Mate S.
The Mate S is really gorgeous and beautifully made. These are fantastic phones, and they're always lacking in one area. They have really good cameras too, and they're always lacking in one area, is that they seem to be using a slightly old version of Android with their weird UI that doesn't have an app tray, and so it always feels.
It just does a lot of weird things in general. The software doesn't act like Android acts.
Exactly.
And I talked about LG changing a little. And really throwing me off. Huawei just throws it all out. I mean, they start fresh with the software, and it doesn't appeal to a Western audience in any way.
Right.
And not a lot of people know Huawei. Fewer people have actually owned a Huawei phone in the West.
Yeah.
And you talked about the Mate S and the P8. I remember the P6 being
P6.
a brilliantly designed phone. From everything, I think about the tolerances, the materials, how everything came together made so much sense, and it was really good. And this is over 2 years ago, but the software has not improved up to this day.
So, I mean, basically there are three kind of tiers of software out there. There is, four really. There is the Nexus, right? Like pure Android. Then there's the Motos and the new A9, which is super lightweight, barely customized.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that.
Android. We'll talk about it in a sec. And then there is the kind of slight customized, like Samsung has reduced its customization over the years. LG has reduced customization. In that category, I would lump the M9 and the previous HTC phones with a sense, not like we see it on the A9, but like we saw it on the M9. And then, you've got the Huaweis of the world, which are in the Amazons. Well, then I guess Amazon's a whole different tier because it's actually forking the OS. But you know what I'm saying?
Those are the Xiaomi is the same as Huawei as well.
Exactly. That's Huawei, yeah. So Huawei, I put the Android Now launcher, Google Now launcher, and the Google keyboard generally, that alleviates some of the pain. But I have to say, pulling this back to the Nexuses, we're getting all the amazing fit and finish and build quality of these high-end Huawei phones with pure Nexus experience for, what is it, $499, $449, whatever.
$499 for a 32 gig model.
And I'm telling you, it obliterates last year's Nexus 6. Just forget it. If you have a Nexus 6, drop it right now, smash it with a hammer, go buy a Nexus 6P and call it a day.
Yeah, it looks really nice. I unfortunately wasn't at the event to use one. I'm going to be able to see one next week when I'll be able to see our review unit. But I'm super excited about it, simply for all the same reasons you said. Huawei does make good hardware, but now it gets a little bit of physical design influence from Google, and then the software is built to run on it, and that's huge because every time I looked at Huawei phones, usually at MWC, CES, the software is just like, well, I could never recommend this.
Yeah. And so now, without getting into specifics that affect both Nexuses, I want to talk about the 5X a bit too. The 5X is delightful because we all loved our Nexus 5s. If you have
I
Nexus
still
5,
love my Nexus 5.
Me too. Do not go smash it with a hammer, unlike the Nexus 6 if you have a Nexus 5. Trust me when I say this is probably the most significant Nexus. The 5, up to now, is the most significant Nexus ever made. And it's probably going to be one you want to hang on to for posterity because it really, really defined what a Nexus could be. And the Nexus 5X takes everything you love about the Nexus 5 and brings it to 2015. And it's also made by LG. And trust me when I say that you can't go wrong with either of these Nexuses, but the Nexus 5X, I mean, for the price, could just be the best phone on the market today.
That's the big thing for me is you're not getting, they cut corners, obviously. It has to be $380.
Right.
But they cut back on the materials, but you're still getting a great software experience, great internals for the software. Excuse me. Enough internals to push around everything. 1080p screen that's good. You're getting the same basic camera experience. And again, it feels like just a cohesive device, just like the Nexus 5 did. Nobody cared really about the Nexus 5's hardware because it didn't matter, because it ran amazingly and it was a Nexus.
Right. So I think there are two things I want to talk about regarding the Nexus that are disappointing me a bit, one more than the other, and it's the fact that they lost OIS on the cameras. And then the second thing is much less of an issue to me, but it's they lost wireless charging on these Nexuses. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I'll start with wireless charging. I have a lot of wireless chargers, and I love wireless charging.
Me too. Disappointing.
So that kills me. That really does kill me, and I'm really liking using wireless charging on my Note 5, just like I did on my GS6, just like I did on my Nexus 6 and my Nexus 5 and my Nexus 4. And it's really sad that they've given up on that after 3 years. Right. Doing it after they gave up on pogo pins on the original Nexus 7 and the G and X, which those were stupid. Those are stupid. but I just really wish they could have found a way to get it into the Nexus 5X. Obviously, the 6P, it's
hard. Yeah.
People can talk about, there's new technology to do wireless charging through metal, whatever. I didn't expect them to make a groundbreaking, wireless charge through metal on the Nexus 6P. Yeah. But part of the reason at least for me, we loved the Nexus 5, the original, was that, it was also this thing that did wireless charging and you could just set it down. And this was 2 years ago. And they made a big deal about it. And it's really sad to see it go. I understand USB-C helps, yada, yada, yada. Cool.
Quick charge primarily, right?
And it's not fast charging. Yeah. But I don't use it for that. I mean, I use wireless charging because I have a wireless charger next to my bed and I set it down. I know it's charging in the morning. I reach over without looking and just pick up my phone and it's at 100% battery and now we're good to go. And, I know they said, just like everybody else says, oh, well, there are thickness concerns and design concerns. And, you're putting in a feature that only, I don't know what percentage you think
5 people use.
I was going to say no more than 10% of people are actively using wireless charging. But at the same time, we're seeing Samsung make a huge concerted
effort. Samsung. They're like, we're doing it and we're doing it fast and we're doing it wide. Go nuts.
Yeah. After years of Samsung not including it, but selling external backs that made your phone all clunky and stupid. And the Nexus 5X, it's like, it's flat and plastic and nice. And it looks like I should be able to set this down on this Qi charger on my desk and it should just go bloop, bloop and start charging. But it's not. I know. So trombone. And OIS on the camera. I took I got to use it for a day before mine died. I'm really excited to use the cameras more. My replacement arrives tomorrow. I'm going on a trip. I'm going to take lots of pictures. It seems like they're going to say it doesn't need OIS. Well, yeah,
that's bullshit.
A lot of different cameras don't need OIS. It just makes everything better. It affords you a lot of things. I mean, I just look at the iPhone 6 and 6S. They can take fantastic photos. They can take good photos even at night. But you know what makes that little bit of difference? The 6S Plus has OIS, leaves the shutter speed open a little longer, the ISO a little lower, and it takes
Yep.
better photos. I mean,
same with the G4, exactly.
right. And the Note 5. I mean, we saw
Note 5. Yeah.
right, and we saw the well, I'm just gonna take a quick tangent. We saw the Galaxy S5, no OIS, took really shitty photos. At night, it could not do anything. It could not help itself at all. It was not worth it at all after like 5 p.m. And then they came out with the Note 4 and they said, hey, has OIS and a different sensor. It's more it's more
awesome.
capable in low light. And the Note 4 beat the pants off of it 6 months later. And
I know.
they're doing the right things. They're doing cool stuff in the camera. Now I'm going back to the 5X and 6P. They do a lot of good stuff. Any camera nowadays should be able to take good pictures and good lighting. And they do that. And the camera app is a little faster. It's still a little slow, but compared to something like a G4 or Note 5. But God dang it, why didn't you just put the OIS in there with these huge pixels? You could have done some amazing things, I think.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So you can swear. God damn it. Anyway,
look,
look,
I just wish they would have, even if they only put it in the 6P because the phone's $120 more.
exactly.
Huawei has done plenty of cameras with OIS in them. I mean, the Nexus 5, I've taken plenty of amazing photos with the Nexus 5.
Yeah, and also Nexus 6, as much as I hate it, the camera, people went on about how bad it's not bad. I don't understand what people are talking about.
It's slow, but it doesn't take bad pictures.
No. So the bottom line is, I agree with you. I think the reality is those bigger pixels are a fantastic idea. Ultra pixels, HTC had those, and even though they didn't have the right resolution, the idea was sound, and it is still sound today. However, no OIS. I mean, seriously, I agree with you. At least on the 6P, put it on there, you know?
Yep. It would make sense to put it on the 6P. I mean, I commend them for giving almost the exact same camera experience on the 5X as the 6P. That's one of the main reasons why I did buy a 5X. Exactly. Otherwise, I would have gone up to the 6P to get the camera. But having only lost a certain burst mode and 120 frames per second instead of 240 on slow-mo, I don't care. The fact that it's the same exact sensor, lens, everything is huge. And so I appreciate that, but I would have not even batted an eyelash if they had just gone with OIS on the 6P and said, well, that's how it is. It's the premium one. It's $120 more. It has OIS. Just
like they've done on the iPhones. And
of course.
You know what? I think this is interesting because to me, it's there. I'll tell you why they didn't put it on here. It's a cost thing in part, so keep the prices low, but it's also because Google does not know how to fucking make a camera app and an imaging pipeline to go with it. It takes an incredible amount of expertise to make OIS work properly. And it's taken Microsoft and Nokia prior to them number of years to perfect it on their Lumia phones. It's taken LG several generations to get it right with the G4. And finally, Samsung also several generations to get it right with the Note 5, which I think is slightly better than the GS6 even. And you know, it takes a lot of engineering. It takes a lot of software experience and expertise to do it right. And Google just does not have it and doesn't want to spend the money in developing that expertise for whatever reason. Because ultimately, if you look at the camera apps on the Nexuses, they're the most disappointing thing in every single Nexus we've had since the Nexus 1.
Yeah, they're incredibly slow and bad. The apps are not good. And I think it is a good point. It's the same thing we talked about with the OnePlus 2. It has the potential, it has the hardware. The underlying software is just not there. And people think, oh, you just throw OIS in there and it automatically makes it better. No, you need the software has to understand where the, you know, what the OIS is doing. The software has to know when to make use of that in low light, better light. It has to know what to do with the camera sensor to take advantage of it, because otherwise, if you just have OIS in there, it'll help you on, you know, when you're shaking your hand with video a little bit, but the software component is huge. It has to know what's going on. And every single year Google says that the Nexus is the best camera, you know, yada yada yada,
bullshit.
and it's BS every time. This year it's as close as it has ever been to being true.
But it's actually a usable camera. Yeah, it's actually a usable camera this year for the average person who doesn't know anything about photography.
Right, of course. And I think about all these people out there with Nexus 5s, original Nexus 5s today. They get a pretty good experience out of the Nexus 5. But compare that to the folks out there that have a Galaxy S6. And it's just like, just get out of town. It's not even comparable.
Yep. So this segues us into the A9, finally. I left it for the end. We have about 5 minutes. I know we can't both talk about some parts of the A9, but I want your first impressions, and I'm going to give you mine. The reason this ties us in is because the A9 is a $400 phone with OIS that takes better pictures than the M9. Yes, yes, yes.
HTC might have figured out their camera recipe, I guess.
Yes.
All the things coming together. I haven't used an A9 yet. I've been living vicariously through our UK editor, Alex Doby. And so he wrote up an extensive preview. You've said some various things about it as well. Posted lots of nice pictures of it as well. And it seems like, so HTC did a virtual event where they kind of live streamed like a 20-minute stand-up about it. And they pretty much 20 minutes said everything that we want to hear about a phone and then just like drop the mic.
Yep. That's exactly it.
So look, guys, why don't you run through the combination here?
Look, the reality is this, right? Forget specs. You all know it's about user experience. That is why the iPhone is the most famous phone in the world. And Samsung is getting there with the GS6 and the Note 5. Look, yes, we're mad that they lost the removable battery and SD card slot, but wouldn't you say that the Note 5 is a milestone better than the Note 4? Like, it is just such a power combo of awesomeness, right? Because
in terms of using it, yeah.
Right, exactly. In terms of user experience. And so HTC was like, look, we're not doing well. We have lots of in-house experience and expertise. Why don't we make a phone where for once we focus on design and I know this is going to be a hot topic, design, but also and focus on the user experience, like not on the specs, but actually, does this phone work right? Does this phone really get the everyday user happy? And I have to tell you, in my limited experience with it a few days now, they've totally nailed that. This is, for me, going to be my daily driver and the most significant Android phone I've seen this year yet.
So I think
honestly is.
I think if you don't mind, I'm going to compare this to Nexus again, because it's really that combination is way more than the sum of its parts. It's why do you think when you walk down any street in any major city in the US, you see a Nexus 5, original Nexus 5 everywhere?
Yeah.
It's because or an iPhone 5 or an iPhone 5S or whatever. It's because the thing just works really, really well. And they don't care that it only has, whatever, a Snapdragon 800 in it or a 600 or an A8 or an A9. The thing is smooth and it does what they want really well. And it doesn't have any crazy compromises. And the A9, they're saying all the right things. A lighter version of Sense that's updated quickly.
It's like the Moto.
$400.
It's
right,
like
$400 unlocked, and it has a solid camera. It's smaller. It's not a gigantic phone. It has a good screen. It has enough internal processing power to do anything that you need it to do. I don't even care what processor's in it. If it does what it's supposed to do, then that's fine.
Look, I can't tell the difference between that and a Snapdragon 808 or 810 equipped device. I'm not playing games on it, but honestly, it just feels the same to me.
Well, it's the same thing. I look at, you talked about the Note 4 to the Note 5 being a dramatic difference. The software doesn't look dramatically different. And the Note 4's hardware internally is still very capable of pushing around
for sure
everything. But the Note 5 software is just blazing fast compared to the Note 4. way
Exactly.
more than the change in the hardware, the processor and the RAM can,
Yep.
excuse me, can account for. I mean,
Yep.
and it's all about that experience, the software being tailored for the hardware. And, it doesn't matter if the screen isn't, quad HD and 5.7 inches. Does the screen look great? Yeah, sure. It looks great. Okay. Next point. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah. What I like about it is the camera it's the first good camera from HTC since the M7.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't get into much detail since, you'll have to wait till next week, but really guys, wow, like really, wow, it's good. I mean, it's up there with the best. And that's a huge step forward. And I think the other thing that's got me excited is that simplicity of everything, the design, the user experience, it just works. It feels like Android should be.
It's not
huge. Unlike the Nexuses, even the 6P, which is beautifully made, is still a quirky looking phone. This thing, and I know it's going to be a a lot of people are going to be very polarized on this, is a fantastic design. It feels amazing in hand. It's absolutely gorgeous. For the price, it's insanely well made. And, it looks like a freaking iPhone. So what? HTC did it before the iPhone, this design. They did it with the M7, before the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus with these zero gap construction antennas baked into the metal. They actually pour the plastic molding into the metal. They use the metal as a mold for the plastic, and then they machine both of them at the same time. It's a very interesting process. And, of course, Apple does it too now. And
I wish that there wasn't so much focus being put on it, but it, it's bound to happen, obviously.
Of course it's going to happen. But it's also strategy.
Right.
It's a strategy, right?
I talked about this on our Android Central podcast as well, where it really stinks because, like I said, HTC had a 20-minute presentation where they dropped everything that everybody is asking for and made a really solid device by many accounts. And like I said, based on personal accounts from you and other people that I trust, that they're making a solid phone. And all that anybody can say is it looks like an iPhone 6. And it's like, God, that really sucks. I don't want HTC to just make it into a trapezoid or something, or a triangle just to make it, just so it's different, because that wouldn't be a good design choice either. But no. I just wish it was a little different, just so that we could focus on the actual merits of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they went the easy route, but I think it was a strategic move. The reality is, look, Samsung copied the iPhone 6 with the Galaxy S6. They didn't copy it enough. It's because they needed to keep the lawyers happy on both sides. As you know, Samsung and Apple have been at each other's throats for years. But HTC and Apple actually have an agreement, and I'm not sure how much this affects the copying here and whether Apple will sue or what. But the reality is, this is a smart move, because for $250 less than base iPhone, you get 32 gigs of storage, you get a micro SD card, you get a phone that looks and feels just as good as an iPhone, and you get a delightful user experience, and you get OIS, which you don't even have on the base iPhone. And it's Android M. I mean, you cannot go wrong if you're an Android user.
I think that's the big thing we're talking about as well, is HTC is selling Unlock Direct, which they've done a pretty good job about. But this is right out of the gate, Unlock Direct, and $400, and it's still, so it lands in these this range of all these other phones you've been talking about. And HTC is probably realizing that this $650 One M9 is not flying off shelves.
Well, it's not. They're not realizing it. It's just a fact. I mean,
right. And so they seem to be poised to really push this in the US. I've talked to Alex over in the UK, and so he's got this other angle on it, because it's dramatically more expensive in Europe and the UK.
And it's only 2 gigs and 16 gigs of storage.
Right. So it's a lesser phone, and it's a lesser phone, and it's 470 pounds in the UK, which an iPhone 6 is only like 515 pounds or something.
Yeah. So it's undercutting barely.
It really, we get, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense over there.
No, we get 3 gigs and 32 gigs of storage. I mean, look, I will be able to show you more next week and show you some images taken with the phone then. It is very awesome over in every way, this phone. Yes, it is not a spec monster, but trust me when I say that you will barely notice, and you will end up with one of the most stylish phones in your pocket and one of the nicest Android M user experience short of a Nexus. In my opinion, it's the closest thing to a Nexus, even closer than the Motos. That's how good it is. Especially as soon as you put the Android, the Google Now Launcher and Google Keyboard on that thing, even the settings tray is the same as an Android, a regular Nexus.
It's very interesting how they're doing like a different track of Sense here on the A9 versus, and they said this isn't the new Sense. This is just what we're doing on the A9, and it's very, very interesting that they're not going to update the M9 with this like super light software. That's a little odd. I mean, not in a bad way. The whole thing is very unusual, but I tell you what, it is delightful. It's the first. I honestly didn't think I was going to get this excited about this phone, because I mean, I knew it was going to look like an iPhone. I even knew it was going to have OIS. I even knew that it would be a mid-ranger in terms of specs. But the proof is in the pudding. It's better than the sum of its parts. You guys have to just use it. To me, I'm actually thinking I might not use a Nexus for the first time in my life as my main phone again. Just because as much as I like the 5X and the 6P, the lack of OIS is a killer for me. Like, I just, really can't live without it. Right. And so, and here's the crazy thing. Was anybody saying that about the One M9? No. Oh my God. Nobody out there today. I mean, I have one. It's a nice phone. It gets started up, has my SIM in it every once in a while. And I, just to keep tabs on what's going on over there. But after I got mine, I used it for a couple weeks, and that was it.
Me too.
And that's really,
and I kept looking
said
at
anything like that since the M7.
Yeah, I mean, I kept looking at it in this very bittersweet way. I was like, I love the design, the silver. I have the silver and gold, and it's so awesome.
Yeah, I have the silver and gold as well.
And I'm like, and every time I would use the camera, I would just swear and get fucking pissed about it. And I'm just like, seriously, how can you have missed the mark so much after we told you exactly what to do, HTC? Yep. And so here they've really redeemed themselves. So I'm just super excited. I'm also excited about the Nexuses and the Note 5. Let's just quickly go through these. Which are the ones of all the phones we've talked about? The yays and the nays. So the yays to me are Moto G, Note 5, Nextbit, the iPhone 6s Plus. We didn't talk about the iPhones, but the 6s Plus definitely. The V10, the Nexuses, and the One A9. Those are the positives out of this summer. The negatives for me are the OnePlus 2 and the Moto X Pure. And we didn't mention the Galaxy S6 Edge Plus, but it's basically a Note 5 with the weird screen.
It's the Note 5 you shouldn't buy. You should buy the Note 5.
So what about you, Andrew? Let's close this podcast by telling me, out of all these phones, what are the nays and what are the yays?
I would definitely say the yays are the Note 5, the Nexuses, the Moto G. I think that I would almost, I only mentioned it in passing, but the Zenfone 2 as well, I would give some kind of a little yay as like a $200 unlocked phone that just punches way above its weight. But
I agree.
That would be my yays. On the nays, I would say that the Galaxy S6, it's funny because it's almost the exact same phone as the Note 5, but it's smaller and it's great. Battery is so terrible that I can't recommend it.
I know it's so bad.
The OnePlus 2, I put in the nay column. The Moto X Pure, just disappointing. Nay column. And I guess that's I haven't used an A9. I haven't used the A9 yet, but I am in the yay camp just because I think that
by default.
Well, I think that it needs more discussion about what it actually is rather than just this stupid, I hope that kind of discussion about it looking like an iPhone wears off. But so that's why I put that in that camp. The Robin, I'm very much in the yay camp. I want to see it succeed. I don't know if
Me
I would
too.
actually carry it and use it every day, but I want to see it succeed, and I want to see them succeed and continue
Yep.
on.
A V10?
V10, I'm on the nay on the V10, I have to say.
Okay. All right. No worries. See, we can't agree on everything, but we're very close.
Yeah,
So,
the V10 never, it just has not got a fire in me at all.
No, I get it. Well, listen, that wraps it up. We have to go. This is one of the longest podcasts I've done. I tried to keep it an hour, but you know what? We had some technical difficulties and a lot of fun. Thankfully, it's been pretty stable in the last little bit there. So we haven't tried video, but I'm sorry about all the troubles, guys. But sometimes it's just the way it is. But hey, this will be
just conspires against you sometimes.
And not only that, but we'll get a nice cleaned up version of the audio for you. So I want you to pimp yourself, Andrew. Tell us about where people can find you online, and of course, pimp Android Central while you're at it.
Yeah, well, you find me at Android Central every single day talking about all kinds of things. I'm pretty active on Google Plus as well. Andrew Martinik, you'll find me Martonik, and I'm the same on Twitter as well. Google Plus is the place to be if you want to talk about Android.
Sure.
Pretty much that's what's going on over there. But Android Central especially, we do all kinds of stuff over there. So, you can always see what I'm actively doing there. And then, behind the scenes, you see all that stuff on Google Plus instead.
Sweet. You will find me at tnkgrl.com, tnkgrl.com. That's my blog. That's where this podcast ends up. Of course, on my YouTube channel as well, although there's not much to see this time since we did mostly audio. And also wanted to say that I will be back in November with a very special guest. So stay tuned for the next podcast. I think you'll be very excited about who I'm bringing on. And then finally, you can find me on Twitter. I'm very active there, tnkgrl, tnkgrl. It's my handle almost everywhere. Of course, G+. And then I'll be if you are in Dublin for the Web Summit in early November, you'll see me there. Hopefully come say hi. And I'll keep you posted about my any other events I'm going to. But for now, that's the big one. Thanks again, Andrew, for being on. You're awesome. I really love talking phones with you, and I'm glad you could find some time in your busy schedule to join us.
Yeah, I'm glad I could as well, and hopefully the next time that I'm on, we'll have some better internet situation, and we'll be all nice and smooth. But I trust your editing skills to make it seem like nothing ever happened.
We'll fix it. There'll still be a few like, can you hear me there now? But it's fine. Most of the bad stuff will be cut out. All right,
Wonderful.
So stay tuned for more soon. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to my RSS feed so that this ends up in your favorite podcast catcher. And you can find the RSS feed on my blog at tnkgrl.com by clicking on subscribe. And go from there. I'll be back soon with, as I said, a very special guest. And stay tuned for more. And keep in touch. Send some comments, all that stuff. And cheers. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.